So I want to approach another sort of casual topic today, which is the question of Hametz. What is Hametz? What is it? What does it mean? How does it make any sense what we do? So let's see. So Hametz, right, or we'll call it bread for our purposes, is really the cornerstone of humanity, right? It's the cornerstone of sustenance. Everything is built on it. Everything, including just about everything we do, right? Our meals are based on it. Our korbanot are built with it, right? Our sacrifices. So this element of bread is central, absolutely central to what we do, right? And how we live. We take a period of time, a handful of days, and we move just a little bit away from it, not a lot, right? We move to a modified version of it, but it's still basically the same ingredients, the same elements. And then we come right back to it, right? And everybody runs to grab bread right after, right? And because Cohen makes a ton of money on this thing where they auction off the pizza place, they'll auction off the first pizza for $2,000, something like that. So what are we doing? So what are we doing? And then let's go further, right? We have the issue of the stringency of it. It doesn't get much more stringent than it is in terms of bread. We have an absolute prohibition. But unlike anything else, we don't only have a prohibition to indulge it in the way we typically would, which is to ingest it, but we have a prohibition to be anywhere near it. We have a prohibition to see it. It's crazy. Doesn't make any sense. This thing doesn't make any sense. And it's for a minute. And then we go back to it full throttle. This other thing that we create called the matzah is essentially the same thing. It's the same ingredients. We embrace that. We revere it. In fact, when we eat it, we sit like kings to eat it and enjoy it. So I think it's important to look at a few of the perspectives on this and what they might teach us. Good? We're going to do a little example first. Okay. Do the Bidikah, right? Or do the Bidikah? Oh, yeah? So let's see. We do the Bidikah. So when we do the Bidikah, right? What do we do? When we do the Bidikat Hametz, let's see if we could get this from here. Hi, Ellen. Good to see you. Long time. Nice to see you. All right. Bidikat Hametz. Ready? Okay. We make the beracha. Stay with me. I want everybody to stay with me on this thing. We make the beracha on the biur. Excuse me. We make the beracha to burn the hametz. That's at the end of the process. Okay, we make the beracha al biur hametz before we start to check. Step 3, the end of the process, correct? After we make the beracha to burn it, we start looking for it. Step 1, right? And what's the purpose of this whole exercise? Is no, not after the beracha. After the beracha, we make the beracha over here. Right? Here's the beracha right here. We make the beracha to burn it. We don't burn it till the next morning. Good? Everybody good? Good. Stay with me. This is all yours. Here's the person saying the beracha. He or she says the beracha on burning, which doesn't happen till the next day. Right there. When we say the beracha, what do we begin doing? Checking. We begin checking. Does checking have anything to do with my ultimate goal? Not a lot. But we say it here. In the meantime, in the interim, what do? We're mivatel it. We nullify it. Right? Right here in the middle. In between the checking and the burning, we nullify it. We say whatever bread that I haven't found becomes like dirt, right? The dirt of the earth. It means nothing to me. It has no value to me. Good. So I'm making a beracha on this, which I don't even care about burning it or not. Burning it is it's just an add-on. It's just a show. There's nothing really palpable to it. If a person doesn't burn it, but gets rid of it some other way, he fulfilled the mitzvah, right? So I make the beracha on burning it. I may or may not burn it. I make the beracha on burning it. I start checking for it. I may or may not find everything I checked, everything I looked for, right? If I put the 10 perusot around, right, the 10 little pieces, which is 100% minhag, 100% custom, nothing more. If I put them around and I find 8, it's okay, right? You don't have to go crazy. It's okay, right? Good. And what's my tachlit in this whole, what is my point in all of this? My point is the middle cup, which is to do the bitul, to make it worthless and valueless to me. So now, if you're building this structure, you tell me what's going on here. How does this make any sense to you? We'll add a few questions. Is there a door open? Did you close that door? Okay. So let's see. If the person, let's pull in some of the pieces here. Thank you. If the person, okay. If people spoke between making the beracha and starting the check, is that a problem? Somebody spoke. They made the beracha. They made the beracha, Viv, and then they spoke. Do they have to say the beracha again? The answer is yes, because they interrupted the process at the outset. But if they spoke between here and here, is it something we should do? No. But you don't have to say the beracha again because you started the process. Okay, good. Now, if the process is really about nullifying it, our middle cup, why don't we simply say the beracha on that? Shouldn't I say the beracha on what the purpose of the mitzvah is?
He said I don't have to.
What, Leslie?
I'm sorry, I didn't know my audio was on. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. What do you say? Why don't we say the beracha on nullifying it? We say that we never say a beracha, and this is very important. We never say about a beracha on a heartfelt or a heart-defined mitzvah. We can't say a beracha on a heart-defined mitzvah. For example, why don't you say beracha? I'm feeling happy. We add the happiness into other berachot, but why wouldn't you say beracha? Oh, Baruch Hashem, thank you for letting me feel happy. Why? Because it's so subjective. It's so fleeting. Or anything else that goes on in the heart. Why don't we say a beracha for forgiving someone? Why don't we say a beracha for acting humble? Right? We don't say berachot for these things because we call them davar shebelev. Something that's in the heart can't be quantified to the extent that I could say God's name. So now let's put the package together. My job is to make this Hametz meaningless to me. That's my job, right? Not only is it to rid all of my dwellings from it, right? But it's to make it mean absolutely nothing. Because the absolutely nothing or not is in my heart, and I can't quantify it practically, I can't say a beracha on this. Let's do it again. Very important. I have to have a heartfelt feeling that even if I see this fabulous loaf of bread and I eat it 358 days a year, I'm not going to be drawn to it. I'm exempted from it. I separated from it. I don't care about it. It has nothing to do with me, right? That's the Pesach mantra, right? I want to be totally absent of bread. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to stumble onto it. I don't want to anything it, right? That's the purpose of the checking. The purpose of the checking is not to find. How many people really find bread, honestly? Maybe since we all had little kids. Do you find any bread? No, nobody's finding bread, right? Nobody's finding bread. So what's the purpose? The purpose, and some people take hours when they're not finding any bread either. And the reason they take hours is because they're in this process of separating themselves from X. It's a heartfelt, emotional, intellectual process of separation. And because it's heartfelt and it's not on the ground, I can't make a beracha for it.
What's the big deal with that?
Huh?
In other words, I don't want to sound funny, but if they only waited longer for the matzah to rise, it would have been well. So why did we make this whole?
That's right.
So
That's right.
the matzah.
You're right. That's our question, different version, huh?
But it's a symbol.
Okay, let's.
So no one was a symbol of
It ha-
what it represents.
Right, very good. So we got to talk about what it represents. Yeah.
I was gonna say, that probably has something to do with what we talked about last week, that it's not, the holiday is not, the holiday came before
Fantastic. Holiday came before, which means what?
that the Hametz itself is an issue without the holiday and the.
Exactly. Beautiful. The Hametz itself is an issue without the holiday, right? The holiday happens to be because we put a label on something and we put a time frame on something. But the Hametz is this big, and the holiday is meant to capture this for a minute to drive a point. Okay, excellent. Now let's go a little bit further. The Ari Kadosh, right? The editor of the Kabbalah says that if a person is very, very careful in terms of Hametz, that person will not choteh. He won't make a chet the whole year. What is a chet? Huh?
A sin.
A sin. A sin. A chet is a sin, right? But one second. What type of sin is a chet? Huh? It's one that's done because of a lack of care, a lack of rigorousness, without knowing, right? When a person could have known and didn't, when a person could have made the effort and didn't, we call that chet. What are the next two levels? Avon, right? Avon, which is knowing and intentful. And the worst of them, is pesha, when the person knew what he or she was doing and did it to be angry at God. Now, which is the worst one? Which is the worst one? The worst, which one? Well, you know it's wrong. So that would be avono pesha. Good. Chet is the worst one because it's innocuous. It's slightly invisible. I don't think about it. I don't notice it. I don't pay attention to it. It's the rabbis parallel it to that crack in the hourglass where the sand just seeps out slowly and unnoticeably. So our rabbis say that the worst of them is not the deliberate one and not the one we do to anger God, because who does that stuff? Nobody's really doing that. Nobody's doing things against God, right? How many people are doing stuff like that? Or how often does this person do that in his or her life? But what do we do a lot? What do we do a lot? We just, we let it go. We let it go. We don't worry so much about the details. We're not so bothered by it. We're not so focused on it. And that's called chet. Some of the rabbis parallel that to Yetzer Hara, to the evil inclination. The evil inclination, some of our rabbis say, is not this master bad guy inside of somebody. It's this lethargy, laziness, lack of effort, lack of awareness. Good? So the Arizal says that a person who's very rigorous in his or her separation from Hametz will not do a chet the whole year. So what's going on here?
Putting more thought into the mitzvah.
They're putting more thought into the mitzvah and
He's careful, he's.
being more careful. Good. Okay. So being that my wife is now in her full throttle of being a dietitian, and that's all we see or talk about at this point. I'm going to parallel it to a word that I hear 20, 30 times a week, and that is the word cleanse. The word cleanse, right? You mentioned it
Yeah.
once or 300 times. Right. Okay, good. So what is the cleanse? So we have in Judaism, we have elements of cleanse, of a cleanse. What does that mean? We have the mitzvah, for example, person who has leprosy, lo alenu, that person goes outside of the camp for 7 days. We have a 7-day cleanse. 1 second. After the 7 days, aren't they coming back to the camp? Aren't they coming right back to the same circumstances they left a week ago? Of course they are. So what did you do? Oh, we did something. Let's see. We have the Tameh Zav, other types of impurities, also stepping out for 7 days. We have the Ohel Moed, right? The tent of meeting. We were around it, preparing it for 7 days. The Cohen, the high priest, is isolated on the Temple Mount for 7 days before all of his efforts on Yom Kippur. We have that 7-day stint. And now our rabbis say, well, we have the same 7 days related to Hametz. So it appears that this Hametz thing, which from a Kabbalistic point of view, if a person really is rigorous in checking for it and eradicating it and stepping away from it, if the person is rigorous with that, they won't make an inadvertent sin all year round, all year long. It seems like it lines up, again, we're 8 days here, but it's 7 days in Israel. It lines up with the holiday of Pesach, where we're stepping away from this Hametz, we're cleansing for 7 days, even though we're going to go right back to it on the 8th day. The cleanse over the 7-day period is transformative. Okay, so do we know the answer yet? No, we still don't. Transformative from what to what? Now keep in mind, again, the transformation is incredibly demanding. It's of the most demanding. If a person doesn't do it properly, if a person stumbles in this area, the punishment is the worst possible punishment that a person could get. So what are we stepping away from? What is this cleanse about? What does it do for us? What do you say? How does it tie into the rigorousness? How does it tie into those other points that we mentioned? What do you think?
Because you're making a closer connection with God,
You're making a choice to connecting as opposed to what?
not doing anything and staying in your regular realm.
Beautiful. So give me some examples. What do you mean? What is it? How does it work?
No, but you do feel from cleaning and doing. You leaving your regular stuff behind and making Hashem more important to you.
Very good.
That's how I
So what we're doing is we're detoxing for a week. What are we detoxing from?
Everyday
Right.
life.
Well, somehow we're detoxing from what? Everyday life? Maybe a little bit. The mundane? Maybe. What else? What would you say?
Routine.
What's that? She's Vivian smiling on something.
I read something very beautiful.
Chavod.
I read that, Hametz is fermentation. It's a what? Fermentation. And the, fermentation process was actually discovered by human beings.
Right. So Hametz, I'm just going to repeat it for the people on the screen. Hametz is fermentation, and the fermentation process was discovered by human beings. Great.
As opposed to matzah, which is just the flour mixed together, which doesn't take human ingenuity to bring matzah about.
Beautiful. Matzah, no human ingenuity needed. Basic. Bread, flour, water. Great. Good.
Like on Shabbat, we decide that that's the day that God's gonna create, we're gonna sit back on that 7th. The Pesach, by not being creative and not bringing things that are fermented that show human ingenuity, by not doing that, what are we saying? We're saying that Pesach represents that God is the one who is the star of the show. He's the one who took us out of Egypt. He did all of that. And by separating from the Hametz, we're sort of shrinking ourselves and saying, we're not as great or as big in the picture as we may think we are. And we're
Okay.
leaving room for, I don't know if it's perfectly, but the night.
So I want to take a piece of it and I want to leave a piece of it with your permission, right? Okay. So if we're gonna shrink away from something, right? We're shrinking away from something. The question is what? Remember, when we eat the matzah, like we said, we lean, right? The matzah is something that we have great respect for. So this perspective, the more I would say a little more esoteric perspective is that everything we engage in is good. It's all good. There's nothing wrong with Hametz. There's nothing inherently wrong with Hametz. It's good. We make the barachot on it. We had it in the Mishkan. We had it in the temple, right? It really is the basis of everything. Every meal that we make, which is a celebration of our relationship with God, it's all based in Hametz, right? Maybe we'll tie in a little bit of how Vivian's direction with it, and that is that when we step away from it and we just create this little bit of distance, the hope is that there's a simpler reconnect. So if Hametz is man's effort, it's man's input, and I push that aside for 7 days, I cleanse from it for 7 days, maybe when I come back to a simpler, less cluttered relationship with God. Maybe it's just less cluttered. Now, to have less clutter is a massive change. I know what I like, I know what I enjoy in my life, but I'm going to take 7 days and I'm going to say, you know what? How might some of the clutter be removed so this intrinsic relationship, this spectacular relationship that can blow up, can be some of the blinders, some of the covers, some of the blankets could be taken off so that the relationship becomes more raw, more direct, more intimate. That's what we're talking about here. We want the relationship to be more raw, more personal. We want it to be uncluttered. So that's what, now if the relationship is more raw, it means God is more top of mind. He's more accessed. He's more my focus. And the chances of a person sinning inadvertently drop dramatically because my focus changed. So I go back into it, right? When a person comes off the cleanse, they start eating again, right? Mm-hmm. Right. But the idea would be, right, that they're doing it a little bit differently. The sensibility changed. The values changed. The portion sizes may be changed, right? So I'm moving away from a world that looks like this, maybe with God that looks like this, to a world that looks like this, with God who looks bigger. I'm looking for a change in proportion, a change in focus, a change in awareness. And that can be achieved when the Mitzvah steps outside the person who's a leper, and maybe it's because they spoke inappropriately. They have the 7 days to think about that experience and to come back and re-engage society. Maybe the leper spoke Lashon Hara to such an extent that he or she should be excommunicated for 4 years. No, I can make a change. I can recalibrate in 7 days. I can be different. I can change my priorities. I can change my awareness. And if I strip away some of that most core indulgence for a short period of time, when I come back to it, maybe I come back a little bit differently. So we want to make, yeah. Oh, nice.
In everything, if you even in parenting, you react automatically, it's not gonna be, but if you pause and you stop and you think, like so in Shabbat or the Mitzvah, the time out, the pause, so maybe this fits into that.
Fantastic. Love it. The power of the pause. It's fabulous. It's fabulous.
You could then reassess.
Does it also have to do with the ego, man's ego? And that's why when, like when the bread is big, that's when the ego and we feel we have everything, we're doing everything. The matzah is flat, there's no room for ego.
But I want to make it clear. Jim. You're right, but we are not an anti-ego people. I want you to be very careful with this thing, because you know the story, right? In the Talmud, there's a story that the rabbis went to God and they asked God to destroy 2 things, right? They asked him to get rid of a person's ego and a person's urge to worship things other than God. So God complies, so to speak, and what happens? God gets rid of ego, and God gets rid of the urge to worship something other than him. What happens in the world? What would you say? Rachel, what do you say? What happens?
No one did anything.
Nothing. Right. You studied that one in your Talmud class. Great. Yeah. Nothing. And ego, and healthy ego, right? Which is what you're talking about. Healthy ego is a must.
It's what drives you.
It's what drives us. Very good. Right. So we want to be powerhouses. We don't want to be meek. We want to be powerhouses, right? We want to be powerhouses with recalibrated values.
Maybe that's why we eat. We're eating the food that shows that we're nothing, but at the same time that we're eating the food that says that we're nothing, we're leaning like kings to balance that out. We're
Right.
not nothing.
But I don't want you to even think we're nothing. We're not nothing. We're uncluttered.
I'm not nothing. I'm saying God is this big and we're this,
Right.
we're this small, but as we're eating that food that represents God's greatness and our role proportion, we're gonna lean to sort of bring the needle back to center.
Okay, but I want to say it different. I want to say it to you different. I want to say that man is the greatest of greats, other than God. Man is spectacular, gigantic, great, nothing better, and he should feel that way. He is the great. He is the giant. He's spectacular. The only thing better than us is God. Now, if you have 2 people, right? Let's say 2 people are building a relationship. One person thinks is this high in his mind and the other one's mind, and the other person is this high. You'll never have a relationship here, right? You can't. You can't have a relationship because this person can't say what he or she wants to say, can't share, can't communicate, because he puts himself here and the other person here, and vice versa. That's not what we want. We are the greatest thing in the universe, but for God. We're the greatest. We're spectacular. We're better than spectacular. And we would be even more spectacular if we did things like our little cleanse. We would be even higher. The only thing that trumps us is God. That's it. But we want to understand our greatness, because the greatness is the enabler. if I take the cleanse, so to speak, and I understand my greatness, I open a book, I'm sitting with God in a conversation. That's how we look at things. Nothing short of that. Harambam writes in the Moreh, in the Guide for the Perplexed, he writes about this thing. He goes, get off that stuff. Get off it. Just claim your greatness. Right. Let me ask you something. If somebody understands his greatness, right? And there's a fabulous horizon or possibility, he has a pretty good chance of reaching for it, right? Because he understands who he is, right? If someone thinks he's meek, and I'm not saying this is what you said, I'm taking it to a very exaggerated point. If someone thinks he's meek, how much of a reach will he attempt? Very little. So what do we want? We want a massively self-empowered person who understands the incredible reach that he has. And if I remove the clutter and I remove the things that cloud me and the things that I chase, I was telling Jamie yesterday, I met some Jewish people a couple of months ago. I call them Christian Jews. They're Christian Jews. There's nothing else to say. Their bodies are Jewish. Their words here or there are Jewish. But otherwise, their total mindset, their value system, their focus, where they put their energies, what they invest in has nothing to do with Judaism. They just happen to be Jewish. So they don't know who they are. They haven't made any claim to who they are. And think about it, right? Think about it. Like, what did Abraham Avinu say to God? He said, stop. You're not wiping people out. What if we have a handful of religious people there? You're going to stop, right? How do you talk to God that way? Of course I talk to God that way. He told me I can. He built me for that. Moshe Rabbeinu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm going to wipe them all out and build a new nation from you. Moshe Rabbeinu tells him what? No way. No way, nothing doing. 1 second. I'm God and you're a little man. That's right. So I'm going to make it clear to you, God. No way, nothing doing. I'm not looking to belittle God, of course. I'm looking to allow us to understand who we are. And to the extent that a person gets rid of the clutter and uses when you clean out the closet, right? You could see all the stuff that you wanted to keep. It's so much more visible. It's so much more accessible. But if the closet is full of all kinds of stuff, you can't get there. So what are we doing on this holiday, which to your point existed long before we did? We're going to an annual spring cleaning. Maybe that's where it came from. I don't know. An annual spring cleaning, right? Of our minds, of our hearts. Clean out the gunk. For the Ari to say something like, if a person cleans out the Hametz and stays away from the Hametz and is mevatel belev, belibo, right? Like we started, we said it's an action of the heart. That person will not slip from a Torah point of view the entire year. Why? Because he or she retook their values. They grabbed back what they want and who they are. And that's a remarkable thing. Okay.
We're just learning. We're mentioning how when you're very strict with the halakha, all the details of it and learning it, it's not so much about even halakha, it's training your mind to be able to, we discussed this, but I'm saying training your mind to be discerning, and then you apply it to yourself, to be discerning about yourself, what your intentions are, what emotionally, where you're going.
Right.
Which I feel like it ties in very well.
That's exactly where we are. And in fact, that's why
You checking all the corners and everything. It's a physical representation of what we're trying to do emotionally.
exactly, emotionally, intellectually. Beautiful. Now, what do we do? And what do we do? And we've mentioned this before. What do we do at the beginning of the Seder? We ask questions, right? We ask questions, right? Do the questions get answered? No, we never answer them. Right? And what's the halakha? What's the halakha? If a person sitting in the room alone, does he ask the question or not? Why? There's nobody who can answer them. Right? Why do we answer them? Hashem can answer them. Why do we ask the questions?
It's not about the answer.
It's never about the answer, never about the answer, never, never, never about the answer. Okay? It's only about the questions. And that's why when we jump forward to the so-called four sons, right? The Chacham, Rashad, the Tam, and She'eno Yodea V'Sha'al, when we jump forward to those, the smart person, the not such good guy, the soft-spoken, more shy one, and the person who simply can't express his or her thoughts, what do our rabbis say? It's all us. It's all us. It's all us. And if I train my children and myself to have the confidence to ask the question, I won't be categorized as any of those individually, which doesn't work. I'll be in it. I'll be confident, right? We say, "V'chol hamarber l'saper b'yitziat Mitzrayim harei zeh meshubach," right? You're supposed to be, and this thing, right, where we say, "How late did you go? How long did you go? How late did you go?" Right? It's actually a real thing. How late did you go? How long did you go? Because we say that night, yeah, the women hate that because they want to clean the table and go to sleep.
Just serve the food, never mind.
Yeah. Yeah. They say that night is endowed with certain powers of revelation and understanding. And talk. Just keep going, keep talking. Okay. Thoughts at this point? We'll do a few more pieces. We have a little more time. We have a few more minutes. Yeah, we have more time. We'll do a little more pieces.
At night, like not during the day.
That's exactly it. Beautiful. The point is that we call this night Leil Shimurim. This is a night where a number of forces have come into place, metaphysical forces that allow us to understand more, to share more, and the rabbis go out of their way to say, just talk, just share, just ask, just keep going. Don't be, the Haggadah itself is just a launch point. It's not meant to be anything more than that. And we have to say the berachot, this, that. But other than that, the storyline, say whatever you want. The point of the storyline that's embedded in there is to inspire us to speak. Now, as parents and grandparents at this point, right? We want to set the paradigm. We want our children and grandchildren to know that the woman at the table is a serious person, and she asks serious questions. And she's in the conversation. It's a very big thing. My grandmother is X. My mother is X. It's a very big thing. Like I tell the men who learn with me, and I've said this before here, you have to be the posek of the family. You have to be the rabbi of the family, not the rabbi. The rabbi is someone that people go to only after or if their father can't answer the question. The same way the mother sets the moral compass for the family. The mother is the moral compass of the family. And people have to go to her and know that she's the person that sets the level of core values, of sensitivity, of behavior. That's all the mother. But in order for the mother to be that, and for the father to be that, we have to be overt. We have to be very expressive in that.
But now things change, but
No, they didn't change.
for the better.
Oh, yeah? Oh, well, okay.
Not when we were growing up, nobody, we didn't know anything. We only knew what Mac and David taught us.
Right,
But my neighbor, my friend that was sitting next to me, didn't know a damn thing.
right.
Now we all,
Yeah, now we
all
all.
participated.
Fantastic. This is a great point. What do we call this, shall we? We call this something very interesting. What do we call this generation? It's a very interesting point. You probably saw it in the Navi. We call it Dor Hafuch. What does that mean? It's Dor Hafuch. What does it mean? How is it upside down? No, not only the women. No, the children are teaching their parents, right? In the Geulah, in this redemption process, there will be throughout time, the father was the rabbi. The mother was the moral compass. The mother established the moral fiber and thickness and dynamic and resilience of the family. It comes from the mother. Critically important. And the grandmother is the matriarch, must never abdicate that position, right? But there'll be a time in Jewish history, and we're living through it now. 2,000 years ago, when it was described, it wasn't so obvious that it could be, where it's dor hafuch. The generation turns on its head, where the children are teaching the parents, right? It's a time period, an adjustment time period, and it flips back. It flips back to a generation where it's reset, and that comes, it all hastens the time of Mashiach. So it's very exciting to see how things are a little bit upside down now. Is actually very exciting. Let's do one more point. Okay, let's do one more point. Okay, so we have a couple of components, right? We have the three elements of the Jewish people. We have the people, our Torah, and our land, right? The people, the nation, our Torah, and our land, and the land of Israel, right? So we said that there are certain times of year endowed with certain power, endowed with certain promise, endowed with what would be throughout time till the end of time. We said that the holidays were created before time, that the Jewish person can move a little bit the day of that holiday when it actually takes place, which was pretty shocking. Asher tikra'u otam, we said that we have the right to set the specific date, even if we're wrong. We have the right to set the specific date, right? And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu caps it off with B'mo'adam. And we touched on this briefly, and we said Mo'adam means there's a certain season and a certain time period that's impregnated with certain energy and certain forces. So when you look at the spring, you look at a remarkable period, because you have the period of the Exodus, the leaving of Egypt, right? Yetziat Mitzrayim. And you have the period of the giving of the Torah. So you would say this is a pretty remarkable period right now, right? That it's impregnated with the elements that would free us and then bind us to God. And then curiously, what happens? So you have Am Yisrael, the people of Israel, and you have Torah Yisrael in the same few-month time period. Pretty fantastic, because this time period is endowed. It's impregnated with certain things. And then what happens? We get the first sovereign government in the land of Israel in 3,000 years. When do we get it? The same time period. It doesn't make any sense, but it makes total sense. How could it be that a couple of years after a mass destruction of the Jewish people, unprecedented in our history and the history of most people around the world, that we would literally, not to cliche it, we would literally rise from the ashes? It makes no sense. It makes no practical sense. The victory of the War of Independence makes no practical sense on military terms. It didn't happen. It couldn't happen. But when does it happen? Right in the middle of this cycle, where I have Am Yisrael, the people becoming a people, and I have Torah Yisrael, us receiving the Torah. Wow, look at that. We get our country back with the first sovereign government in 3,000 years within the same couple of months. You know why? Because it's impregnated with that power. But then it gets even more remarkable. What else happens within this couple of months? We get back a unified Jerusalem. A unified Jerusalem for the first time since the destruction of the first temple. It doesn't make any logical sense. It can't. The fact that the tiny state of Israel defeated several Arab countries in the tens of millions in 6 days, it doesn't make any sense. We've become used to it. We've become numb to it. But the miraculousness of the time we're living in is unprecedented. And it's all in this time period, as it should be, because now we have the whole setup is aligned. And now we can fully vest as the Jewish people. because we've engaged in it. Now, is it a perfect story? Thank God it's not. We have a long time to go in perfecting ourselves and getting there. But this is where we are. So when we say B'mo Adam and we celebrate that night, what we should also be celebrating and be aware of is that this is not just a good time in Jewish history. It's of the greatest times in Jewish history. And we should be humbled by the fact that we're alive during this time. And we should be soaking in all that HaKadosh Baruch Hu baked into it. How did this happen? What about the overt miracles? You know, the rabbis write an interesting thing. The rabbis write that the Jewish people have a hard time connecting to overt miracles because they're so overwhelmed by them. And what do we typically connect to? We connect to Nes Nistar, with more subtle miracles, like what happened on Purim. But the overt miracles, we have a hard time connecting to. So what does God do? He makes us part of the miracle. How? So, for example, in Pesach, and we'll wrap with this in a few minutes. In Pesach, what does he do? He tells us to take these little animals, these sheep or rams or whatever they were, right? He tells us on the 1st of the month to take them on the 10th of the month, to bring them to our homes, keep them there for 4 days, and then slaughter them in broad daylight, right? Why was that a big deal? Take the taleh, right? Take the little ram, bring it to your house. I'm going to tell you from the 1st of the month. You have to do it on the 10th of the month. You're going to keep it on your doorpost or on your bedpost till the 14th of the month. Then you're going to slaughter it in broad daylight, and you're going to invite everybody you know to join you. Why is that a big deal?
They worship.
They worshipped it, and who else worshipped it?
The Jewish people.
We did. We did. We worshiped the same thing they worship. We were exactly where they were. We were told at the beginning of Nisan, which happens to be the month of that god, the month of the Taleh. So it's the month of the god of the Egyptians, who we adapted as our god. We're told from Rosh Chodesh, from the beginning of the month, so that we sweat and squirm and flip out for 10 days until we take the god that we've made our god, drag it through the street, tie it onto a bedpost, let it sit there for 4 days, and then we slaughter the god that we've worshipped for decades and maybe 100 years or two. It's mind-boggling. It's absolutely transformative. It might be one of the reasons why only 20% left. But what does it tell us? It tells us that when there's an overt miracle, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give us a platform to engage it. He won't only overwhelm us with it. He'll give us a way to engage it. He enabled us to be part of it by demanding of us that we slaughter the idol worship in us, that we slaughter it in us in broad daylight. And we don't do it in the house. We do it outside, and we invite the whole family. And if the animal is too big, we invite some friends. And then what do? We take the blood of the animal and we put it on the front door. If we didn't stick it to the Egyptians and us enough, we go to this crazy extent of broadcasting it in the strongest sense, i.e., God, when he does these overt miracles, these very demonstrative things, he will give us the platform to step up. He will empower us to step up, even though the very overt miracles are overwhelmingly his, for the shock and awe value, but he will give us the opportunity to collaborate with them, and he does. A couple of other things he did. He gave us the Makat Bechorot, right? That went after the firstborn or the oldest in the household of the Egyptians, right? We went after them, spared us, right? That was a big deal. The Jewish people were frightened. Why should it be? We're no different than them. And then finally, what does he tell us to do? To be partners to the miracle and not just observers. He tells the men to be circumcised for the first time in maybe 200 years. What are you talking about? A slave. They beat a slave. They hit a slave. They injure a slave. Does anybody care about what they do to a slave? Zero. Did anybody care how badly they hurt the Jewish slaves? They would beat them and injure them and permanently hurt them. Nobody cared. So now you're taking this person who's lived like a slave and you're telling him to injure himself further. That's greatness that the Jewish people were able to do it. And that establishes partnership. And that establishes a particular type of partnership when there's an overt miracle where the chances to step up and partner are so difficult. We stepped up, we partnered, and we rode through together. So that's a little bit of this Hametz story and more of an overview. Thank you, everybody. Great to see you. Thank you. Ellen, when you coming home? Soon? All right. Leslie, thank you for being on. Take care, y'all. Thank you.